Willie D Live.
It's Willie D, y'all, back with another episode of information and instructions to help you navigate through this wild, crazy, beautiful world. In the studio, hold on, I'm finna say your name. I'm finna get it. Vladislav Liobovsky. Liobovny.
Vladislav Liobovny. Yeah.
Liobovny. Okay.
That was the name I was born with.
Liobovny.
Liobovny. Yeah.
Liobovny. Well, I don't know why I thought you had 4 syllables in your last name.
Liobovny, 3.
So it's 3.
Yeah.
Liobovny. Okay. Yeah. All right. And famously known as Vlad. The man behind Vlad TV. Mm-hmm. This is your first time back in Houston since 2008?
About that, yeah.
2008.
Around that time.
Which is when you launched Vlad TV, right?
About that time, yeah.
About that time.
Yeah, it was that same year.
That's about 17 years now.
About 17 years, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my first time really kind of spending time in Houston also.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I was walking around the mall. People were like walking up to me.
Yeah.
Telling me how much they love Vlad TV. I mean, it's a nice feeling to get that, especially in a new city.
Right. H-Town for Vlad.
That's right.
Hey, man, the last time that I was on your show was like 2020, I think, right?
About that time, yeah.
That was 2020.
Yes.
And that's because something very interesting happened around that time.
Yeah.
So we're going to get right into that.
Yeah.
You've built your platform off of Black culture and voices. And yet when it came to Farrakhan, you misquoted him and refused to apologize, and which led to a lot of people in the hip-hop community coming at you and disassociating themselves with you, most notably Godfrey and Lord Jamar, who were regulars on the show. Mm-hmm. I didn't disassociate myself with you. I remained friends with you.
Correct.
But I did boycott doing your show.
Yes.
I boycotted the show.
Right.
And I did that because, Farrakhan is one of those people that I hold in high regard to such a degree that, I'm actually glad he was born. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think people walk around with that type of thing like, man, I'm glad this guy was born. I'm glad we have this guy. No. Farrakhan has done like a lot of good in our community, and he saved a whole lot of Black people. So when you refused to apologize to Farrakhan, I took offense to that, and I told you that, right?
Yeah.
On more than one occasion.
Yeah, no, we had multiple conversations on the phone about it.
Right. And, you made a statement that read, at the time, you said, on Friday, Vlad TV posted an interview with D.L. Hughley where I referenced part of Farrakhan's speech about Jews. After our interview was released, I was made aware that there was a later part in Farrakhan's speech where he clarified those points. Based on that info, we removed that part of our interview, changed the title, and removed the social media post. Although I don't agree with some of Farrakhan's statements, Vlad TV has always reported on people accurately and will continue to do so. Mm-hmm. So where you stand today?
I've changed my stance about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why did you do that?
Well, at the time, I had some people around me who I thought had my best intentions, who I realized later on didn't and had their own agendas. And sometimes when you get into situations like this, you choose the people around you as opposed to the public, because the people around you are the people that you have to deal with every day and are closer to you. The public you could deal with. We all deal with public backlash and so forth. So at the time, I decided to go with that direction, even though it didn't really sit right on me. But over time, I got to see some of those people's true colors. And I started to really think of the moment that I was actually going to come forward and talk about it. And you being my actual friend and us talking about it for years and years, I felt that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it on this platform. Because I've done dozens of interviews since then, right? And I've always said before my interviews, no Farrakhan questions. And everyone's always respected that, just like I respect people when they come to my platform to say the same thing. But I feel like at this time, especially with what's happening between Israel, Jews and Muslims around the world, I don't feel that this stance of both parties just kind of buckling down and saying that we're not going to see the other person's side and so forth hasn't done anybody any good. So I feel as a prominent person in hip hop who is Jewish, one of the, probably one of the small handful of people in hip hop who are Jewish and are openly Jewish about it, I felt that it was my duty to try to fix things. Because ultimately, when you look at the relationship between the Nation of Islam and the Jewish community, it's never been good. And what does that accomplish for both parties? Nothing. Am I right?
Right.
So I felt that it was time to address it. And I told you for a little while now that when I address it, I'm going to address it with you. And that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, you kept your word.
Yeah.
You kept your word.
Yeah.
How bad did it get out there? Because I can only, we didn't talk about it every single instance that came up that was a remnant of that action.
Mm-hmm.
So how bad did it get?
I think it personally got bad because some of the people that I was thinking, like in the same way that you and I had conversations, those conversations remain private, right?
Right.
I respect you, you respect me, and when we have these types of conversations and I open up to you and I say certain things about what's happening, I know that the next day you're not going to run to the internet and say, something Vlad told me in a personal phone call that he really feels this way and so forth. So I was talking to a number of people who I thought we had relationships. I thought they were my friends. I thought that we were, there's a level of trust and so forth, only to have those people turn around and start making videos the next day about these conversations, and these conversations weren't represented properly a lot of times. Things were twisted up. Things were changed and so forth to make me look bad and make the person look good. And that hurt. That hurt because some of these people had been in my home. I've extended myself to those people. I fed them. I helped promote them and so forth. And I thought there was a mutual respect. So I think that was the most hurtful part. The public is the public. We all deal with our, over time I've dealt with this lots of times. The public being mad at me. And eventually they get over it and you go back to business. But some of those relationships that I no longer have, that I had at the time, and the way that those relationships fell apart, that's what really hurt the most.
Yeah.
And that's why I respected our relationship, because you said, listen, I don't agree with your stance, and I'm not going to do your show for a while, but I would never go out and bash you publicly, which over the last 5 years you never did. Even when you had people on the show that didn't agree with what I said, you didn't go overboard with letting them just kind of trash me on your show. So that to me was the most difficult part.
Yeah. I think, for me, that's the way that I rock, right? But here's the thing that, because I have a lot of reverence for Godfrey and for Lord Jamar. And so the way I operate is this. Like, when you hurt somebody, you don't get to dictate how they respond. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know if you, I know that you apologized, but I don't know if you really understand the depth of how people feel about Farrakhan. Like, he's not a regular dude. Mm-hmm. Like, I know he's a human being like us, and he bleed and breathe just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. He gets colds, and his stomach hurts sometimes, and
right.
Get food poisoning. I got all of that. But Farrakhan is so revered because he take the hits. Heavy is the head that wear the crown. Mm-hmm. And he has worn the crown for a long time. And his head has been heavy for a long time for wearing that crown. And, he's been misrepresented, misunderstood for a long, long, long time. What I want to know is, when Farrakhan does talk about Jews, oftentimes when he do talk about Jews, he talk about he speaks specifically. He don't put everybody in one bunch and say this is all you guys. He talk about specific guys who did this or did that or did that. Mm-hmm. What I want to know is like, why is it that it seems to me like most of the Jewish community have an issue with Farrakhan speaking the truth? Because he don't lie. When he speaks things, when he talk about things, he speak on the truth. He just talk, this happened, this happened, this happened, this who did it, you know? And he do the same thing with black people. I've been on stage with Farrakhan, and he called people out sitting on the stage, including me. Mm-hmm. Like he just tell the truth. He just speak on, what's righteous. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a problem with if I do something and somebody call it out or whatever. I really don't have a problem with that, because if I didn't want to have a problem with that, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a certain knee-jerk reaction when someone who's not of your immediate group talks about your group, right?
Okay, I hear that.
A black person can talk about other black people, but when a white person talks about black people, it's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, when you look at like the Breakfast Club, and it was the owner of the Eagles, I believe, was on the show and was saying, he doesn't like how black people attack other black people like Meek Mill, and they call him gay and stuff like that. And there was a big backlash over that.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Right?
Was he the owner of the...
Was it the Eagles?
Was it the Eagles? It was that guy that do the parties, right?
Yeah, right, that guy.
Him.
Yeah,
I
forgot. Maybe he's not the owner of the Eagles. He owns some sports team.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm misrepresenting him, because I'm just trying to address what you're saying. But he made comments about the black community.
Yeah.
And there was a huge backlash over it.
Right.
And he said that someone who I respect more than anyone else reached out to me and showed me the error of my ways and let me apologize. He was probably talking about Jay-Z.
Okay.
Which is what most people thought. But that's the thing. When people have a certain level of leeway of talking about their own group. I could talk about how I don't like how the Israeli government is handling the conflict with Hamas. I could say how it's too heavy-handed. I could say that I'm not a fan of Netanyahu and so forth. But I'm Jewish, and I could say that. A Muslim person or a black person saying that might get accused of being anti-Semitic. But it's the same statement from both people. But based on the person saying it, it's going to be taken a different type of way. So I think that's what happens. When you have someone like a Farrakhan talking about the black community, everyone's cool with it. But he starts talking about other communities, then people have more of an issue with it.
Okay, I get that, because when I was making music, I was oftentimes accused of being racist, right?
Really?
We can get into the real definition of what racism is, but I understand what they was trying to say. My point is that I would call out the government. I'd call out police officers who kill black folks who just almost always happen to be white. The people in power who make these decisions that adversely affect the black community, they just happen to be white. When I call them out, I call them out specifically. Mm-hmm. I never said all of you, all white people, all of this, nothing. I'm always specific. So when I call them out, oh, he's a racist. Oh, he don't like white people. He's this, that, whatever. But when a white guy does it, he's a rebel. If I do it, I'm anti-Semitic. I'm not a patriot. Yeah, I'm anti-white. I'm not patriotic. But when a white guy does it, he's a rebel. He's a patriot.
Right.
He's a patriot, and he's celebrated. But I get it. I get
it's
that
a double
part.
standard. I'm not saying it's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's how most humans take it. It just is what it is. So I think that answers your question in terms of why it's presented that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to have a conversation with Farrakhan?
I was always willing to have a conversation with Farrakhan. And that's, if I want to address some of the misconceptions, when I first misquoted him. I had a relationship with the Nation of Islam. There was a guy I dealt with. I don't remember his name, but he was one of the people around Farrakhan. I had talked to him on a number of occasions. I'd actually used him to book security. So I had an NOI security guy that I used every so often, for certain situations where I felt it was appropriate. I'd interviewed multiple people from the Nation of Islam. Nuri Muhammad was one. Another, I forgot the name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I saw that interview.
I saw a couple interviews.
Really good interview, too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I also interviewed, Malcolm X's daughter and so forth. So I had what I felt was a relatively cool relationship with the Nation. Sorry, what was the question again? I lost my train of thought a little bit.
I asked you, would you be willing to sit down with
Right,
Farrakhan?
sorry. Thank you. So when this whole thing happened, the first phone call I got was from the guy I dealt with in the NOI. And the first thing he said was, hey, let's address this misquote. Do an interview with Nuri Muhammad about it. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense because I wasn't talking about Nuri. I was talking about Farrakhan. So I'm not going to have a conversation with someone who I wasn't talking about the person I was talking about. But if he's open to it, I'm willing to have a conversation with Farrakhan about it on or off camera. And he said, oh, well, you're just trying to get content. I said, well, no, I'll do it with your cameras. I'll go to his location. You guys could film it. You guys could edit it. You guys could put it out. I think this would be good for the Jewish community and the Muslim community right now. But he said, well, no, that's not going to happen. And I said, okay, that's fine. I respect it. And then that got twisted into Vlad will only apologize if he gets an interview with Farrakhan, which honestly was never said. It was never said like that.
What if you had said something about Obama and Obama refused to sit down with you, but Biden was? Biden said, I'll sit down. I'll sit down. Would you have sat down with Biden, or would you have stood on?
Would I sit down with the
principle?
vice president? Yes, I would. But would I sit down with some cabinet person in Obama's administration? No.
See,
But from what I understand, Nuri was not the vice president of the Nation of Islam at the time. I don't know where he is now.
Yeah, he may not have been the vice president, but he's a major player.
Okay.
So this.
I wasn't aware of his role in it, but for me, it was like, I don't want to have this turn into, something that it's not. You see what I'm saying? I talked about this person, me and this person, I'm willing to have a conversation with him, but if he doesn't want to have it, that's totally fine. I'm extending, the offer. And, I've never actually spoken to him directly or anything else like that. I've heard different things from different parties around him. But at the end of the day, I just felt that it wasn't something that made sense to me at the time.
Right. I can see where you're coming from because, if you directed something toward a particular person, you would love to have that sit down and talk to that person. But if you can't, then, hey, you go with the next best thing that you can get close to, and especially if you're talking about somebody with rank. What I think that people need to understand about those of us who love Farrakhan is that Farrakhan is more important than the president to us.
Okay. I respect that.
He's more important than the president to us. So that's why we have that type of reverence for him. And that's why Royce the 5'9" said what he said about you, because he loves Farrakhan for real. Mm-hmm. Like we look at him like we're not worshiping him. What we're doing is respecting him. Mm-hmm. We respect the work that he put in and the sacrifices that he made. So when people say things that's offensive towards him or they try to attack Farrakhan, then we take offense to that.
Right. And listen, you can't really take away the accomplishments that Farrakhan has made. The Million Man March, Justice or Else, and people like yourself who admire him and look up to him. Like, that's not easy to accomplish.
The people he's reformed.
Yeah.
We're talking about tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah. I wasn't doing
like how many
yeah.
people do you know has done that?
No,
you can look at name any pastor. You can't name one preacher out there
Mm-hmm.
who can take credit for actually reforming people who have been at the bottom of the barrel
Right.
and raised up out of the ashes and became responsible,
Right.
productive, loving, caring, generous human beings.
Yeah.
You cannot name one person that's alive.
I agree, man. And at the end of the day, you can't take a person's whole story and say, well, I don't like this one phrase he used on this one day and throw away all the other accomplishments. That's just not fair.
Right.
And at the end of the day, also, it's just words, right? Like, I've never heard of Farrakhan saying something that triggered violence or triggered economic catastrophes or anything else like that. He said what he said. Some people, accept it. Some people don't. But ultimately, I've never heard of the Jewish community being hurt by Farrakhan's words. So to sit there and say, I despise this person and everything he does is out the window when you look at what he's actually done for his own community, you can't deny it. And that was the reason why I was interviewing NOI people. This is the reason why I had a relationship with certain people at NOI. I hired them for security and so forth. It was a respectful relationship until this happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, having the capacity to apologize
Yeah.
is not a weakness, it's an attribute.
Yeah. And let me be clear. I would like to apologize to Minister Farrakhan for misquoting him back in 2020. Period.
There you go.
No ifs, but, or anything else like that. Point blank, period. This is what I'm doing on your show.
Now, that's honorable.
Thank you.
That's honorable.
And also, let me just say, this was not a decision based on pressure by anybody, by financial duress. It's not like I have to do this in order to turn the company around. The company's been doing fine all these years. It's not because I'm trying to get to a certain guest and by doing this and so forth. No, there's no reason behind this except for it's the right thing to do. And I'm fully aware that a lot of people are going to hear this and say, fuck your apology. It's too late. We're not going to accept it. Whatever. And that's fine because this is not for those people. This is something that I felt I should do. And some people will accept it and some people won't. And I'm fully aware going into that, what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I cannot accept on anybody else's behalf but mine. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I accept, man, because I know it's sincere. And like you said, you didn't have to apologize. I mean, you're your own man. You're self-made. That's hard to get an apology out of a self-made person. It is very difficult to get an apology out of somebody who's loaded, who got paper, who's papered up, because oftentimes they got the attitude like, yeah, F the world, you know what I'm saying? I do what I want to do, and if it don't, there's no skin off my back, whatever, So I appreciate you, coming here and saying that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on what's going on in Ukraine?
I mean, I was born there.
Yeah. And did you leave when you were 5?
About 5, yeah.
Okay. So what are your thoughts about Ukraine? You have aren't your parents Ukrainian and Russian?
Well, at the time it was Russia. It was the USSR.
Okay.
Ukraine was part of that whole conglomerate.
Right.
Almost like the United States, right? Imagine if the United States financially fell apart and California became its own country and Texas became its own country and so forth. That's basically what happened to Russia in the early 90s, I think, late 80s, early 90s, around that time, where a bunch of the countries broke apart and became independent. So at the time that I was born, I was Russian. I was part of the USSR in the state of Ukraine. But after everything fell apart, Ukraine became its own country. So you could say I'm Russian, you could say I'm Ukrainian. It's technically both true.
But there's a lot of Russians still living in Ukraine.
Well, like, what is a Russian exactly? You see what I'm saying? Is it someone that went from Moscow to the Ukraine? Is it? It's a little fuzzy at this point because now they speak a different language. They speak Ukrainian, which is kind of like Russian, but kind of not.
I think if you're born there, if you were born in that region,
right?
Then
I mean, my parents were born in that region. I was born in that region.
So what was the name of the region at the time?
It was Ukraine, which was part of Russia. Just like you could say you were born in Texas.
Yeah.
It was part of, you were born in Texas, but it's part of the USA. So you're from Texas, but you're American.
Right.
So we were from Ukraine, but we were Russian.
Right.
That's how it worked.
Right.
Yeah. But in terms of what's happening now, I mean, it's messed up. It's messed up. It's, me speaking about this prevents me from going back to Russia these days because I'm concerned that as big as my voice is, if I go over there, I could possibly get arrested. You've seen situations like this, like Brittany Griner, who she had a vape pen and ended up in a prison. Yeah. There was a reporter who they said made some comments that was anti-Russian. There was some woman who donated to some Ukrainian fund that was put in jail because she donated like $5 to some Ukrainian charity. So. I remember I did an interview in Variety magazine where I spoke about it, and I have spoken about it multiple times. It makes me weary about going to Russia anytime soon, even though I've been there as a tourist, some years back. I don't think I would do it now because I'd be too worried about getting, locked up.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about people saying that coming on Vlad TV is a trap for criminals? Mm. Because people oftentimes, they tell on themselves when they come on Vlad TV. They talk about their past crimes, and sometimes that stuff is not, what do they call it? The statute of limitation is still open there, Well,
I'm careful when it comes to statute of limitations. You've never heard me talking about an open murder case, except for Keefe D. But Keefe D, before he came on Vlad TV, wrote a book about his open murder case. Yeah. So we spoke before the interview, and I said, "Are you willing to talk about what's in the book?" And he was like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay. You have a book. It's on Amazon. It's not like some little private book. It's on Amazon." So in that case, and he felt like he had immunity because of the proffer agreement and so forth. So, essentially he came in confident that he could speak about it. So I took his word for it. But other than that, you really can't name anybody who has gone on Vlad TV and then that interview from Vlad TV has then put them in prison.
So
that I know of.
So here's my take on that.
Yeah.
So I hear a lot of people saying that, like, Vlad the police, right. Vlad this, and he go in there and
Booker T was the latest person to go on that rant.
Is that right?
Yeah, me and Booker T. You know about this whole story?
No.
The whole Booker T. Swerve Strickland situation?
No, that's my boy, man. What?
You want to get into it?
As long as it's not bashing Booker T.
Well,
if it's bashing him, I don't want to. That's my dog.
Well, it's not bashing him, but there is some truth behind the story. I mean, I can save the story. It's cool.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't. If it's going to bash him, I don't want to bash.
Well, it's not bashing, but there was some stuff that was said back and forth.
Yeah.
During the course of this this interaction.
I got it. I respect that.
Yeah, I respect Booker T as well.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the story, off camera, and you'll kind of get a better idea of what happened.
Yeah. So here's my take on people coming on the show and people saying that, they're snitching on themselves and you getting people locked up. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a viral moment. If a motherfucker kills somebody in our community, that motherfucker deserves to get locked up, so I don't give a damn how he get locked up. I don't care what show he go on and what he say to get his ass locked up. He deserves to be fucking locked up. I don't understand that. Like, you go in there, nah, fuck that. Fuck that. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't be disgusted by the lack of love for human life. You cannot act like you care so much about the community when you see people killing their own people. Just like they're in a video game. And then when somebody comes on any show, doesn't matter if it's Vlad or any show, and slips up and says something that can get them locked up for a crime that they committed against their own community, you got a problem with that? I don't. Lock that motherfucker up. Lock his funky ass up. Yeah, keep on coming on, Vlad. Keep on coming over here talking. Keep talking your business, because Vlad ain't put no gun to nobody's head. Vlad ain't put one gun to one person's head and said, all right, motherfucker, tell us everything you know, or I'm going to shoot you right here now, you know? So, nah, I'm not with that, man. I'm not with that. I think it's hypocritical to act like you care about the community and you love the community, but at the same time you protect savages. You protect uncivilized mutts who prey on our community, who prey on our women and our children, and even our men, our young boys, who prey on them and, make their lives difficult. You make it difficult to just, man, in many of our neighborhoods, just walking to the store is an adventure. Okay, I'll be right back. You got to hug tight because you don't know if they're coming back. See, I lived that. So I'm not with that, with protecting people that bring harm to our community. You got people out here killing our sons, killing our daughters, and they come on a show and they say something that incriminates them. Keep talking, motherfucker.
Well, I'll say this, and I'm not going to go into the details because this is your man and so forth, but in the process of the back and forth that was happening between me and Booker T and so forth, I had brought to light there's a guy who is a registered sex offender. And I had posted a picture of him during the course of this back and forth. And the next day, news broke that he was arrested for violating his registered sex offender guidelines by not registering cars and emails and other stuff like that. So he got locked up the next day. So if you want to say I locked people up, I locked up this registered sex offender. I'll stand on that.
Right.
Not from an interview, from a post that I did that started to go viral, and then all the, Yahoo and Sports Illustrated started picking up and so forth. But yeah, I'll stand behind that.
Yeah. I don't think most people are going to have a problem with that because
I don't think so
because
either.
I think we want to know where they are. We want to know who lives next. We want to know if we got a sex offender or a serial killer living next door to us.
Right. A registered sex offender at that.
Yeah. We want to know that.
Yeah, and he was arrested for sexual assault of a 12 to 15-year-old. So yeah, like I said in my post, good riddance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you spoken at all to Godfrey or Lord Jamar?
No.
Not at all?
Not at all.
What are your thoughts about ever patching that up?
I think it's possible.
And the reason why I ask that, man, because it's almost like y'all are joined at the hip. When I think about Vlad TV, and I'm talking about from years back, I'm not talking about right now, I'm thinking about, it's like, the people who was there helping build the blocks, And they were very much involved. And you helped them as much as they help you.
Yeah,
right?
No, I think it was a mutually beneficial relationship with everyone involved. Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, nobody got killed. Nobody got hurt. There were some words spoken. And at the end of the day, words are words. The older I get, the more I realize how little power words really have and how people put too much power in other people's words.
Well, I do agree with the second part of what you said. We put too much power in other people's words. But that first part, words are not just words. Because if you think about this. Think about how many people we're walking on right now who are dead prior to an argument, they were killed. Like before they were killed, an argument ensued.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere down the line, that was an argument.
Yeah.
And maybe that argument, it morphed into a physical conflict, confrontation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, most people who get killed, if you think about everybody that you know who's ever been killed, that was an argument that ensued prior to them being killed.
Right.
And this is why you have to be careful with words, because words can trigger
Well,
an emotional response.
Correct.
That can get you killed.
No, I understand that. And what I'm saying is I can't control the way my words affect other people, but I can't control the way other people's words affect me. And what I realized is that I took over time I spent too much energy on other people's words when they were just words. And that was a growth that I had to go through. And you really see this, like, for example, like with Kanye right now. Like, Kanye is really almost trying to prove this point that he could say whatever he wants and people will just have to deal with it and he'll just keep going on with his life. He called his mother a lesbian. He said all types of things about Jews. He said all types of things about black people. He wears a Klan outfit. He has an iced out swastika. He called Jay-Z's kids retarded. Like, you'd be hard pressed to find someone more offensive with their words. I mean, maybe a Charleston White, but Charleston doesn't have a voice like Kanye, right? Kanye is a global phenomenon. So when you see these words that he's saying, and, I remember in the beginning when he first went on his rants, it kind of bothered me, but now it's just sort of like, whatever. He's going to say what he says. I'm going to go have lunch. Whether he said it or not, my lunch is still going to taste the same. And that was just a growth that I had to go through of letting other people's words affect me. Now, I understand that there's repercussions for my words, and I can't, if I say something to you, I can't control your emotions. But with me, I realized I needed to grow up a little bit and not take words quite so seriously and not let myself be triggered with actions and so forth. And you also got to think, when the whole Farrakhan thing occurred, you got to remember where we were as a world. This was 2020.
COVID.
Right when COVID was hitting.
Yeah.
Everyone was triggered. Everyone was stressed out. I don't care who you are. Nobody was in the right state of mind at that point. Am I right?
Right.
The world had shut down. Everyone was wearing masks. Everyone was worried about dying. We all had friends who were dying. DJ K-Slay died. That was my friend. 3 people I interviewed died from COVID. And, I was not in my right state of mind at the time. And I think the world was also very much elevated in terms of being triggered at the time. So, yeah, it's not an excuse of any sort. I stand behind everything I said then, and I stand behind everything I say now. But you got to step back and see what was happening at the time. Everyone, George Floyd was happening right around that same time, right? There was riots, there were murders, there was we all got to see Rodney King, but George Floyd was an actual murder that we saw on camera, as opposed to just a brutal beating. And remember all the riots that were breaking up?
I say it wasn't a quick murder either. It was
a slow, hideous murder.
Yeah. And
the whole world at the time was going crazy, and it was a rough time, man. You didn't know what was going to happen. COVID right now seems like it never happened, but at the time it was a lot. We didn't know what that next year was going to look like. We didn't know whether we were going to be alive that next year. So a lot of things that were happening were very exaggerated, I felt, during that time.
Man, it's crazy that 5 years has passed that fast.
Right.
I didn't realize I hadn't done your show in 5 years. I hadn't realized it had been that long.
Yeah.
You lost your dad what year?
It was right before COVID. It was about maybe, because, he...
Yeah, see, that don't even seem like that long to me.
It was maybe 6 months before COVID, so maybe 5.5 years ago or something like that.
Does it seem like that long to you?
I mean, the older you get, the faster time seems to go.
Yeah.
So not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
You grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Well, I didn't grow up in Springfield.
Or was it California?
Well, okay, so what happened was around the age of 5, my family moved to America. And the first place they settled in was Springfield, Massachusetts. Okay. Right? And I was there because I remember going to 3rd grade in California. I think I went to 2nd grade in San Francisco. So like kindergarten, 1st grade, right around that time. So maybe there was a couple of years that I lived in Springfield. I remember I lived in the projects early on. And then eventually my family moved into like the bottom level of this old woman's home. And then eventually moved to California. And I think right around 2nd grade is where I started going to school in California. And then my family settled in San Mateo. And that's when I started like going to elementary school and then onward to high school and so forth.
And what was it like growing up in your house? And what kind of kid was you?
I was an only child, and
you was getting into stuff.
What do you mean?
Were you getting into stuff? A lot of things.
I mean, I got arrested as a kid.
For what?
I had me and 2 friends. There was a mall near our house named Hillsdale Mall. I'm not sure if it's around anymore. But we were out late one night. My family was on vacation during that time. They were out of town. My parents were out of town.
And how old are you?
Maybe 14? About that time? Yeah, about
about
that age, about 14?
Yeah.
Me and 2 friends were riding around on our bikes around Hillsdale Mall after it was closed at night. And we found a way into the mall. One of the side doors was open. So we took like a kryptonite lock. Remember those things? And we locked our bikes together and threw them in the bushes. And we all went into the mall. And there was no security guards around, at least where we were. So we went in, and there was this candy store, and we took like some cases of candy. I remember like the gummy Coke bottles. You know, I remember that was one of the candies that we took. And we took a couple cases of it, and we ran outside with it. And I was by myself, and the 2 other friends said, we're going to go back in and get some more. And I said, well, I'm cool with that. I'm just going to stay outside, right? Y'all on your own. I go to get the locks, and I'd lost the key to the lock that held the bikes together, right? Just, you know. But this is what happens when you're doing crimes, you know.
You always forget something.
You always forget something. Dumb shit happens. So I'm like, okay, waiting for my friends to come out, and I'm sitting there next to these bikes that are locked together, and the police roll up. And they're like, what are you doing out here? I said, I was just hanging out with my friends, but I lost, you know, we were just hanging out, and I had my bikes, you know, I'd locked my bikes up, but I lost the key. So the police started like running the serial numbers of the bikes to see if they were stolen. They weren't stolen.
The bikes had serial numbers?
Or something. It was something like that. I mean, they were just going through to make sure that these weren't stolen bikes.
Right.
You know, I don't know if it was serial numbers or whether someone had reported bikes stolen. It was something like that, right? Okay, so I'm out here by myself with a police car and these 3 bikes that are clamped together. And the police was like, okay, well, the bikes are cool. Well, you know, let's help you maybe find the key. Now, the candy was stashed nearby, right? So as they're looking for the key...
The other guys come out of the door.
Well, no. The police find the cases of candy.
Okay.
And then they call the mall security, and the 2 guys that went in got caught and arrested already. The police put all the stories together, and they realized what had just happened. We all get arrested. My family gets a call while they're on vacation. They have to come back and so forth. And ultimately, I end up getting a community service for it. I mean, they got the candy back. You know, I don't know. It was like maybe $50, $80 worth of candy. And me and the other 2 guys had to do community service. And that was pretty much the end of my relationship with those 2 guys anyways. You know, after that, we never really spoke again. And, you know, when I got to 18, I got my record expunged. So I got that off my record. And, you know, and I realized how stupid that was. I realized I'm not a good criminal. You know, this is not something I wanted to pursue later in life.
Did you get a whooping?
My parents didn't really hit me like that.
You didn't get whippings?
Maybe as a kid, I was like 5 or something, but eventually my parents.
Oh, yeah, something like that. In my house, that would have been a fantastic ass whooping.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that would have been one for the record books.
I mean, I think the problem, and this is why I felt like I wasn't as close with my family, my parents, as much as I wish I was, is that there was just such a huge cultural divide between us. They were Russians coming from Russia. My dad was, I think, 11 years older than my mom. So he was like, I believe, like in his late 30s maybe coming over. She was like in her late 20s. Imagine being in your 20s or 30s and suddenly being thrown into a whole other country with a whole different language, a whole different culture. Like if we put you in China right now, you'd probably go and try to find some Americans and try to hold on to your own culture as opposed to really engulfing yourself into Chinese culture. And that's ultimately what happened. I grew up as a child, as a 5-year-old. Although Russian was my first language, I learned English very quickly. I didn't have an accent. Like when you hear me talk, can you hear an accent?
No.
Yeah, see, I never really have an accent. My dad had a very thick accent. My mom had an accent as well. And they really just associated with other Russians. My mom had Russian friends. My dad didn't really have a lot of friends.
Did y'all live in a Russian community?
No. And that was sort of the thing of like, in San Francisco, when we first moved, for like maybe, 6 months, there was a big Russian community around and so forth, especially, when I was at school, there was lots of other Russian kids. But where we settled, where my parents bought a home, which was in San Mateo, California, I was like the only Russian kid anywhere. In fact, like in the school, I only had one other friend who was Russian. He was half black, half Russian. He had a black dad and a Russian mom.
Military kid?
No, his mom cheated on his dad at work.
Okay.
and told him that, lied about who his real dad was and said, oh, you must have had a black relative somewhere in your family we didn't know about. So he grew up thinking he was white when he was really black. And, it was a whole clusterfuck that he had to, deal with in therapy later on in life.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just me and him. And it was a lot of fights, man. You got to think that during that time in the 80s, Russia and America were essentially at war. Like that there was a real underlying fear of a nuclear war during that time. You remember those times.
Mm-hmm.
There was like TV shows like The Day After that showed what would happen if there was a nuclear war. Before that there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where it was like there was actual nuclear missiles right off the coast of Florida. Like there was times where it was very tense. So I was viewed as very much as an enemy by a lot of kids just because I was named Vlad and I was Russian. And I just remember getting into a lot of fights during that time, having to punch people in the face for saying fucked up shit and, that type of thing just because. And I was the only one.
Did it ever cause you to spiral into depression?
No, because I think right around that time is when I discovered hip-hop. And I kind of fell in love with it early on. And I started to kind of gravitate towards like the black kids and the Filipino kids and the Spanish kids. They were all kind of going through a version of what I was going through themselves. And I think that's what kind of attracted me to the culture and the art form and so forth. And because we were all kind of going through versions of that. I'm not going to say I know what it's like to be black. I don't. You know what I'm saying? But I do know what it's like to be Russian during the Cold War named Vlad. I do know that. And, it's I think there was a certain bond that kind of happened between us because we were all going through this racist type, bigoted type shit, in an area where it was predominantly white and Asian.
Yeah. You've had a lot of controversial figures on your show.
Yeah.
How much of what we see on Vlad TV is the real deal, and how much of it is, more so for clicks?
I think it's mostly the real deal. I mean, yeah, I play certain things up, for the audience, but I think that when you look at the various figures that have large followings on the internet, it's because that's really who they are. They're being themselves. It's hard to find someone who has millions of followers that's like playing a role. I mean, would you agree with me?
To an extent, I do agree with you. But it is some suckers out there that's misleading people,
Yeah.
and they got a lot of followers.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like you putting people on, you've put a lot of people on. Is there anybody out there that you wish you hadn't put on? Wish you hadn't gave them that big ass platform to amplify their message?
I mean, some things that Charleston White has done after our interviews have been pretty repulsive. You know, talking about raping babies and that type of thing, wishing people's kids would die and mothers and fathers would die and so forth. And that's an example of someone who takes free speech to the worst possible place that you could take it to. And I've done 2 interviews with him. And I remember after the first interview, he had said some stuff about Asians that was kind of repulsive. And me and him had a conversation about that. And it seemed like he kind of understood where I was coming from and seemed like he was not going to keep going in that direction. So we did another interview. But then after that interview, he kind of went even harder into that type of, you know, if you want to call it hate speech or whatever else. So yeah, I'm not too thrilled over having Charleston White on the show. There was a guy that we had on, I don't remember his name, but because sometimes other people do interviews on Vlad TV. So Sean Perez does a lot of interviews for me. He's a former Bad Boy executive. And he had brought this guy to me that had done other interviews, and he essentially co-signed this guy and was like, listen, this guy was in the car when 50 Cent got shot. He was also the president of Murder Inc. at one point. And, you know, this is Sean telling me, so I'm like, okay, like this is a serious guy. I've never had a reason to doubt anything that he says before. Me and his relationship go back since my mixtape days. So I've known him since like 2004, right? Like over 20 years. So we brought this guy on, and he did the interview with this guy, and he's talking about the 50 Cent situation, he's talking about the Murder Inc. situation. And I remember 50 had posted on his Instagram, it was a screenshot of my interview with this guy talking about how he was in the car when 50 got shot, and it said fraudulent across. And I'm like, damn. All right, let me make some phone calls. So I called him Ja Rule. And I said, was this guy ever the president of Murder Inc.? He said, I have no idea who this person is. So I called Chris Gotti. I said, do you know who this is? He said, I've never heard of this guy in my life. So I just felt stupid, you know, and I think like, you know, I took down all the videos right away, and I think Sean told me that like some guys from this guy's neighborhood ended up pressing him over the situation, and essentially what got back to him was that the only truth in this guy's interview was the projects he grew up in. Everything else was completely made up. So occasionally you get these crazy people, you know, and you see that, you know, these days it's more common. You see people like Jaguar Wright and, you know, and Orlando Brown and something, you know, people like that who go on these platforms and just make up a bunch of crazy shit, and people just run with it and gets a lot of views and so forth. But that's never been something that I've ever wanted to push, a bunch of false narratives. So yeah, I regret that. And, you know, this is why I've never had Jaguar Wright on my show. This is why, you know, I had Orlando Brown on, but after I did the interview with him and I got to see who he really was off camera, I'm like, okay, this is a crazy person. This is someone who's not sane. This is not an act. He really is crazy off camera.
What made you think he was really crazy off camera? Because sometimes when you hear Orlando talking, he seems to know exactly what he's talking about, and he sometimes will tell you, see how I just made you do that and made you think this way, but here, look, I'm really over here, and da-da-da, and he break it down very, like, poetically. But he knows it's like he's very articulate the way that he breaks things down. Well, so how sure can you be that he's actually, you know, mentally off?
Well, being crazy doesn't mean you're dumb. There's a lot of smart, crazy people out there. In fact, genius and insanity sometimes are,
Yeah.
it's a very gray line between these two. I just got to hear him talk and have conversations off camera with some of the people that he brought and so forth, and it was just like, okay, he's not really playing this up for the camera. He really does believe some of this stuff, and he really is acting the same way off camera without the cameras rolling than on camera. So I'm like, okay. And it's not like the stuff that he says has ever been validated by anybody.
You wanted to be a music producer more than you wanted to be a DJ, is that right?
Well,
at one point.
Sort of. So I grew up, like my mom is musical, right? I think, like she could play, like I could play her a song and she could replay it on a piano, something I could never do. But in school, I played various instruments. I played the saxophone, the clarinet, a little bit of piano, and so forth. When I got to college, to UC Berkeley, I started.
You was in computer science?
I was in computer science.
Yeah.
But this was the first time. You got to understand that growing up in San Mateo in the suburbs, you're not around rappers at all. I never met a rapper until I went to Berkeley, and then I got to see like Souls of Mischief and Dell hanging out on the block on Telegraph Ave, and suddenly it was like this hip hop thing finally seemed real to me. I could actually talk to the people and shake hands with them and work with them, and there was like this whole underground hip hop scene, with various rappers, like All the King's Horses, and just a bunch of people like the Grouch, and I'm forgetting some of the names during that time, but I was starting to get to know some of these people. And I started, I bought a drum machine. I bought a sampler. I started making beats. I bought an MPC 60, and I started doing demos and everything else with people. And that kind of continued for a number of years, but it didn't really go anywhere. I did like one demo. It didn't go anywhere. It got a little bit of local radio play. It wasn't progressing. And as time went on, I just had to admit to myself that I'm just not as musically talented as a Dr. Dre or a DJ Premier.
And how difficult was it for you to reinvent yourself? Like, because oftentimes when we have a talent that we feel that we can really do, we can be pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and nothing's popping. So, and we just continue to push. Some of us, like right now, you got guys out there that are in their 50s and 60s still trying to put out their first rap album.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, with me, I never wanted to be mid-level in anything I did, right? So I knew that if I kept staying with these hip-hop beats and kept pushing, I might get a placement here and there. I might work with some artists and maybe get a little something. But I had to be honest with myself and say, listen, like, I'm listening to this DJ Premier beat, and I can't do this. I don't have that ear for him to find that sample and put it together in the way you know what I'm saying? Like, I just had to be honest with myself. And I was like, I'm just wasting a lot of my time here. I'm in my bedroom working on these beats for hours and hours and hours, and it's not accomplishing anything. I play it for a few of my friends, and I work with these rappers who aren't progressing either. So I had to just admit to myself that this is not going anywhere. And around that time, I had a house party I had gotten a new apartment in the East Bay in Emeryville, and I had this big house party, and a DJ came over, DJ Poison, and he left his turntables. He was going to pick them up the next day. So after everyone left, I just jumped on the turntables and I started messing around, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of easy for me, because I'd been working on beats for so long and I knew how song structure worked. I said, oh, okay, well, this actually I could do. I remember I made a mixtape the first day. I literally pressed record and in real time was able to beat match and everything else like that. And I said, okay, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is going to be the thing that I could really excel at. And ultimately, that led to the Tupac Rap Phenomenon mixtape, which was mixtape of the year, and the Rock Phenomenon mixtape with Rock Raider, which was mashup of the year, and so forth. And that really, it was like those mixtapes, you know, seeing them on MTV, seeing them in Double XL, like meeting other DJs that were like, oh, yo, I love that mixtape. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, oh, okay, now I'm actually part of hip hop doing this. Not doing beats, but doing mixtapes. I'm actually part of it. And that was like the greatest feeling ever at the time. To go from just being a fan of hip hop to being part of the creative process of it all. That was like the greatest feeling ever.
How do you feel when people call you a culture vulture?
The same as someone calling me a honky or a redneck or a cracker. It's just another version of that.
Yeah. I asked that question, obviously, because, you know, I see it a lot. You know, I'm a subscriber to your channel. I never stopped. I never canceled. I don't know why. I guess if I would have really been thinking about it, I would have canceled my subscription to your channel. But I never cancel. I don't cancel subscriptions, man. I just
thank you.
But yeah, I asked that question because I've seen that in the comments a lot.
Yeah, all the time.
People,
I get called a culture vulture 1,000 times a day.
Yeah. What's the difference between you and somebody who you think or you consider a real culture vulture?
I think that's a real term. Because when you look at other prominent people who are called culture vultures, they really have an immense level of contribution. Lyor Cohen, you can't downplay what he's done in hip hop. In fact, right now, and I interviewed him about this, I asked him the same question. I essentially asked him if he was the most powerful person on earth when it comes to music, because he's the head of YouTube Music Global, not just America. YouTube Music Global, he's the head of. You know, me and him just texted the other day. I mean, I'm you know, I respect what he did. Vlad TV used to be located in SRC Records, which is headed by Steve Rifkin, another person who's constantly being called a culture vulture. This is the guy that introduced the world to Wu-Tang, Big Pun, Exhibit, 3 6 Mafia, Akon, Melanie Fiona, Asher Roth.
But he got paid to do that, though. You know what I'm saying? Somebody could easily argue that, he wouldn't have done it. He didn't do it out the goodness of his heart. He did it because he was getting paid, you know?
What other music executive hasn't gotten paid?
This was his job. But we're talking about people that have been...
Lil J got paid.
But we're talking about people that's being accused of being a culture vulture, though.
Well, of course you're going to get paid for putting out products that millions of people are enamored by. But you also got to see... Like, people like to say he got paid off all these artists and, you know, he took advantage of them and put them in bad deals and he made most of the money, blah, 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 blah. Most of these people on this that were on Loud Records or SRC Records all became rich, number one. And you also have to understand, and you don't really get to see this as an outsider, but when it comes to the music industry in general, not just SRC Records or not just Def Jam, any label, and I would say that Rap-A-Lot probably falls in the same category. Yes, you have your superstar artists that break out, but for every one of those, there's 9 artists that the label invests hundreds of thousands of dollars into that end up losing 100% of their money. Am I right?
I don't know if it's 9, but it's up there.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
It's most. It's the majority. Majority of the time, when you take a new artist, I'm not talking about.
Well, the big labels do. The big labels lose a lot. It's like the smaller labels can't afford to lose.
They can't afford, but they still lose.
But they do.
They still lose.
Yeah, there are small labels that come out with 1-2 artists and then they go under. Like they never ever
they never
the
existed.
surface.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. And you get to see how many artists Steve Rifkin had put money behind, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that went nowhere, that lost the entire amount of money, that never even sold one album. So, yeah, it's great that Wu-Tang blew up, but that wasn't a guarantee. It's great that Big Pun blew up, not a guarantee. There was a number of artists on that label, and I'm not going to say who because I don't want to embarrass these people, but the label put them on promo tour and paid for videos and paid for studio time and features and producers and this, that, and the third, only for them never to sell any albums.
You know what? I think that black people who call white people and other people culture vultures, the biggest knock that they have is when you profit from the culture, but that's all you do. You don't do anything outside of that. Like, for example, black folks are in this country are undoubtedly a marginalized group. We catch hell from this government every single day. And the white folks that I do know that are not, that people don't call culture vultures, they're actually out there walking with us. They fight with us. They when there's some bullshit going on, they call it. And those are the ones you never hear black folks calling them culture vultures, even if they are making money. See, because It's not just about money when you call somebody a culture vulture. It's bigger than just money. It's also about, like, walking with us, you know? And I think that's the big difference.
Listen, like a Bernie Sanders, for example, right? I don't think too many people call Bernie Sanders a culture vulture.
Not too many, but that motherfucker ain't down with reparations, so he can kiss it.
Okay, all right.
He can kiss her.
So who would be an example of a white guy who's not a culture vulture?
Paul Wall. Easy. Paul Wall is my brother. Easy. Like Paul Wall, Paul Wall gonna walk with us. You can call Paul Wall, and if there's something that's going on in the community, Paul gonna be there. Like, if he can be there, he will be there, and he is consistent. He don't do it for points. He is really passionate about it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Look, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. It's not like I walk with certain groups and not with others. I'm just not a person who engages in that a lot, period. So I'm not going to say, well, I refuse to do it, but I will walk with the Jewish community and so forth. I don't walk with the Jewish community either. You know what I'm saying?
Well, do you walk?
No, I'm not really a walker.
You don't
like
walk
that.
at all.
I'm just not a walker. So I'm not going to sit there and lie about all the stuff I did that you may not know about that I'm just making up at the time.
Yeah.
No, that's just not my personality. This comes down to being who you are. Now, Vlad TV did contribute to the NAACP during the whole George Floyd
That's big.
situation. People bashed me for that. They were saying, oh, you should have donated Black Lives Matter. Then you see how Black Lives Matter ultimately turned out, with the buying themselves houses and paying themselves huge fees and so forth. And I have, I publicly supported Kamala Harris. I voted for Kamala Harris. I publicly put out my support for her. I was anti-Trump. We pushed the George Floyd situation in interviews. I've let I think that as a whole, I think my voice and my stances and what I've talked to my guests about over the years have all consistently been pro-black. And you could go through my whole catalog and you could see that. Now, of course, people are going to pick out certain things and so forth and say, well, that's not true. But when you look at what I do as a whole, I think I've always been pro-black. I think that the track record speaks for itself.
Yeah. What does Vlad think about what's going on with this administration?
With Trump?
Yeah. What's going on with the, with people losing their jobs and, the way that Trump came in day one and started firing people at the FAA. And then the planes started going down, people losing their jobs.
Look, I'll be honest. I'm not necessarily against a lot of that, simply because government has always been a very inefficient system compared to private industry. look at the post office. Would you say that's a well-run organization?
No, that's one of the worst organizations known to man.
Yeah, go to the DMV. Go to and look, and in certain things, like for example, the post office, you can compare it to a private institution like a FedEx or a UPS, and you'll see how much better those organizations run. So I think that, and plus in government, and when you look at as a whole, listen, my mom had a government job, right? I'm not just speaking out my ass. My mom worked for the Navy, right, as a civilian. She was an environmental engineer. I seen a video accused her of being a KGB spy and so forth, all this silliness. But no, she worked as an environmental engineer for the Navy. And the reason why she took that job is because of the stability. My dad was trying to build his own company. He had a home inspection company. His money would be going up and down depending on how many clients he had that month. She had the stable government job. People take these jobs because they know that they'll get to keep their job. It's hard to fire them. And they can get away with a lot of things that the private industry just won't tolerate. A lot of stuff that people do in the post office, they would have gotten fired if they were at UPS. And the shaking up of the system, I'm not against it. Now, are you going to hurt some people in the process? Are some good people going to lose their jobs and so forth? Absolutely. And are some of the targets unfortunate? You know, like I talked to a woman the other day. She works at the Library of Congress, and she has this this huge catalog of interviews with prominent Black leaders in all different types of genres. And she was telling me how a lot of the funding in these African American oriented organizations is being cut and so forth. So I think that's very unfortunate because in the process you're going to lose important cultural things. But as a whole, I feel like the shakeup needs to happen. So I'm not totally mad, with the whole Doge thing. Like me and Vivek are supposed to do another interview. Elon Musk is involved in the Doge thing as well. Like, I think that some of this stuff is really going to improve the overall government system after the dust settles. But in the process, it's going to be ugly. But in any sort of real change, you're going to have a lot of people hurt in the process. And a lot of people are going to be unhappy because they've been able to, keep things well for themselves because of the status quo. But ultimately, life evolves. Things change.
Vlad, the dude named a government organization after a cryptocurrency.
Right.
Department of Government Efficiency.
Doge.
Not Doge. That don't sound suspicious. Just calling it that already, it sounds like they're playing in our face. Okay, so here's what happens. Trump and Elon said that they were going to cut $2 trillion from America's budget. They're going to get us back to where we need to be, right? In the same breath, Trump has spent over $30 million just in 4 months in office playing golf. How do you save us all this money when the president is spending $30 million playing golf? And how can we take you seriously when you start talking about cutting cost, like trimming the fat, draining the swamp? How can we really take you seriously, bro? And so now, instead of getting the $2 trillion cut, now Elon has admitted that, well, don't look like we're going to be able to meet our goal of $2 trillion, but it seems like it's going to be more like 15% of that $2 trillion.
Okay, that's not bad.
That ain't going to happen. That's not going to happen. You know why? Because every year the budget gets higher. It don't get lower.
Right.
Spending increases. It does not decrease.
Well, inflation also happens, so you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and he should keep it in mind, too, because they're the ones running the organization. They should know more than anybody.
Right. I mean, look, like,
I don't believe in shaking things up just for the fact of shaking things up, man. You got to have a plan.
Doesn't always works, man.
You got to have a plan.
But at the end of the day, imagine if Trump cut income tax. You and I would be very happy about this.
Yeah, well, the thing is that whatever Trump does, he's doing it for him and his buddies. Look, I really, truly don't mind paying extra so that more people can have a better chance.
Right.
I really don't, and I've always expressed that.
Yeah, me too. I've always been a
way.
Democrat. I've always voted Democratic, from Bill Clinton to Obama. Did I vote for Obama? I just may not have been voting those years, but I supported Obama publicly. I voted for Kamala Harris. I voted for Biden against Trump. I think people forgot who Trump really was because 4 years had passed. And people felt like, something, maybe he's not so bad. And, he's kind of getting picked on, all these court cases, that ultimately he gets found guilty of, but nothing happens. And you got to put it on all the people that voted for him. I didn't vote for him.
Well, I think...
But he clearly won, right?
I think you put
by
it...
a large margin.
I think you put it on Elon Musk because I don't think he won. I think it was rigged.
I don't think it was rigged.
I think the election was rigged.
I don't think so.
I absolutely believe it was rigged.
Okay, listen, we can agree to disagree. Here's what I felt. In 2020, people were not necessarily voting for Biden. They were voting against Trump. They were sick of Trump. They hated him. They wanted him out of office. You could have put a parakeet to run against him, and the parakeet would have won, right?
Okay, I accept that.
I don't think people were really gung-ho about Biden in the same way they were gung-ho about Obama, in the same way that Trump supporters are gung-ho about him, the same way that people were gung-ho about Bill Clinton. You see what I'm saying? But once the dust settled and we got to the end of Biden's term, then you had Kamala. Biden stepped down. Kamala stepped in. There was not an anti-Trump wave in the same way there was 4 years ago. People had forgotten. People didn't think he was that bad anymore. And I don't feel like there was a real excitement over Kamala. It seemed like there was in the very beginning, but that quickly tapered off. And I also felt like Kamala didn't really handle her campaign very well. I've been very vocal about the fact that she was turning down interviews left and right that could have really helped her, like a Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
Trump was right there. J.D. Vance was right there. She said, I'll do a 1-hour interview at my location. And Joe turned it down.
Yeah, but it was that was one of the big things. That was one of the big missing out on that Joe Rogan interview was huge, and that's one of those examples of where your ego gets in the way and pride comes before the fall.
Yeah, no, listen. I remember when I talked to D.L. Hughley about this. His co-host after the interview was done.
Yeah, shout out to D.L.
Yeah, that's my man.
Yeah,
his co-host. I forgot her name, and I apologize for that. But she basically yelled at me after the interview. She was like, Kamala is a sitting vice president. She gets to decide how the interview is laid out. Joe Rogan doesn't get to decide the format and so forth. And I'm like, okay. And she decided.
She don't get to decide no damn format. Ain't nobody ever came on my show and decided the format.
No, but I'm saying, but you could make that stance. If I come in here and say, I'm going to give you 20 minutes, and then I leave, you have no power to stop me from leaving.
True.
But what I'm saying is, she made that stance, and he didn't bite. He didn't agree with her, and ultimately the interview never happened. And who did it hurt? Did it hurt Joe Rogan? Did it hurt Kamala?
It hurt her the most.
Right. So there was not excitement over Kamala. There was still an excitement with Trump supporters.
Explain this.
Ultimately, he won.
Explain this.
And let me just tell you, I looked it up. The last time there was a blowout of this proportion was when Obama beat McCain.
Yeah, well, that made sense. This did not make any sense because keep in mind, listen, man, when you look at the results of that election, think back before the actual election day when Trump was making statements like, you're going to vote one time and you ain't got to vote no more after this. You'll never have to do it again. Look, I don't really need your votes. That's what he said. What politician in your lifetime have you ever heard utter the words, I don't need your votes? He actually said that.
Right.
I don't even need your votes. Because you know why? Because he knew he had Elon Musk.
Okay. Listen.
And that AI.
Okay. We can agree and disagree.
What-
At the end of the day, we'll never know.
What are your
Unless something comes out that exposes everything, we're never going to know. In the same way that Trump accused all these voting companies, all these voting machines of cheating for him, all that was struck down in every court.
Well, that's a preemptive strike for Trump and the Republicans. That's what they do anyway. They like, look, I'm going to accuse you of something that I myself is going to be guilty of. And
Projection.
And just in case it don't work out for me, this is what I'm going to blame on it. I'm going to blame that you guys did this and that to me and poor me, woe me, and now there's going to be problems. What president you know in the history, whoever said if you don't vote for me, things are going to get ugly? It's going to get real bad around here. It could be dangerous. I mean, some people may not like that. They might,
I mean,
Come
you
on,
probably
man.
go back to the Theodore Roosevelts and so forth back in the day. They were pretty reckless and so forth. But listen, Trump is the social media monster that was created, that ultimately was elected twice. And I didn't vote for him. But at the end of the day, the way that he handled his campaign was way better than what Kamala did. He hit up every podcast. He hit up a bunch of people that I think Kamala felt was beneath her. He went on those platforms. And he didn't pull any punches. He let people talk to him as long as they wanted. There was nothing off limits. He really, I think the one thing he did was he let people know who he was, whereas Kamala was always just very guarded the entire time. You didn't get a feel as to who she was as a person.
Yeah, we can go back and forth on that. Man, what are your thoughts on DEI?
On DEI, I've always been pro DEI. I've always been pro affirmative action. I remember being at UC Berkeley when Jesse Jackson was speaking at Sproul Plaza about it when they were trying to get rid of it and so forth. I feel that as a whole, there's nothing wrong with if a certain group has been in power for a certain amount of time, there's nothing wrong with letting a few people from different groups into the system, which will in turn create a domino effect in their families and in their communities.
Right.
Okay, so I went to UC Berkeley. You needed like a 4.0 grade point average and really high SAT scores to get in. So you mean to tell me that if they let a couple black kids in, they have a 3.8? They were close, but maybe not quite at that level. You don't think that that's going to actually create a level of inspiration in those families? They're like, oh, okay, Steve was able to go to Berkeley. Okay, now I'm going to do it also, and so forth. So I've always been for it. I mean, in terms of my own company, my own hiring process, I never gave a shit as to who you look like or what color you were, or what gender you were, or what sexual orientation you were.
Can you do the job?
You're here to do the job. I have gay employees, I have black employees, white employees, Spanish employees, women, men. Like, I never really gave much of a shit. But I understand that in certain organizations, it doesn't work that way. People like to hire who they know and people that look like them and people who they think they can relate to and so forth. And over time, you kind of have these situations where certain groups are left out.
Yeah. Certain groups are left out. I'm going to circle the wagon on that. Have you heard about what's going on in China in regards to education and AI?
No.
So Beijing has mandated that kids starting at the age of 6 use AI starting this fall.
Great.
At 6 years old, they are required to learn AI. This is going to put America back. As far as like trying to catch up to China, it ain't going to happen over the next 100 years.
Well, unless
It's not gonna
America
happen.
starts to do the same thing.
They're not going to do the same thing because America is a capitalistic society and they don't care about the people. See, China cares about the people. China wants all of its people to make it. They want all of their people to win.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so
I don't think you could have a communist system that actually does that.
well, you're in a
And
communist.
I'm
you're in
coming
a
from a
communist system now. you know, if you think about some of the things, some of the laws and stuff that we have to adhere to, and some of the things that our politicians do to us, and that we just allow to happen or whatever, you know, they operate like communists already.
I mean, you could say that, but not when it's actually formalized. When you look at this, is coming from someone from a communist system. A communist system is supposed to set up a situation where the money is distributed equally to everybody. Power to the people, you know, workers, you know, drop your chains, et cetera, et cetera. But what has always happened over time is that everyone in the government ends up hoarding all the wealth, and the people end up getting the scraps. When you look at, I'm speaking off the cuff a little bit here, but the number of billionaires in the Chinese government is insane. It's probably the most, when you look at groups as a whole, there's probably more billionaires in that particular group than anywhere else on earth. These people are not elected. The Chinese president, there's not an open election. He is picked by the Communist Party, and he is there as long as he wants to be. In fact, Trump even commented that he has a lifetime term, right? The money all stays in that system, and there's no freedom of speech. You can't criticize the government, or else things start to happen to you. You know, like, for example, where's the owner or the founder of Alibaba these days? He's not running Alibaba anymore. He said a few things about the government, and they're unhappy about it. So when you have a system where you can't criticize the government or else you go to prison, there are no free elections, all the money stays within that government system. And then they go and, you know, they strategically let out a certain amount of money. I mean, you got to think, you couldn't even buy homes in China until like maybe 15 years ago. You could not own a home in China. It was owned by the government and you would rent from them. Over time, they try to do a bit of a quasi-system between capitalism and communism, but it's still a communist system. So if you think that it's all just spread out and they care about their people, they care about themselves, their families, their positions within the government, and everyone else could work it out for themselves. So let's just keep it 100.
But would you rather have, let's keep it 100, would you rather have that system where everybody works it out for themselves and you don't have the police targeting a specific group of people? Or would you rather have a system where you have this group of people versus this group of people versus this group of people and all this goddamn violence on a daily basis? Like you live in Calabasas.
Yeah.
You live in that's one of the most richest areas in the United States.
Right.
And still, and yet you got to have gates and guards and alarms and shit on your house. Mm-hmm. You got to have alarms on your car.
Yeah.
You got to have all this stuff, you know. So we trade our safety and our health for the right to just talk shit. That's what we doing.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's a big right, though.
It's a big right.
Have you been to Dubai?
Yeah, of course.
Safest place on earth, right?
Dubai?
Yeah.
Nah.
One of the safest places on earth.
It's a relatively safe place, but you can't.
Top 5% in the world?
Top 5.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Top 5% of the world. 95% of the world is more dangerous than Dubai, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can leave your wallet on a bench, no one will touch it. I remember I seen videos of women leaving Hermes bags, and they literally film it the whole day.
Yeah.
People just walk by, nobody takes it, nobody looks inside.
Yeah.
You know, when I was there, you know, with a woman, no one ever catcalled. You know, women and kids would walk around in the middle of the night, totally safe, right? Say some shit about the king. See what happens to you.
if the king has stewardship over the country being that safe, yeah, I'm all with it. Don't say shit about the king. I'm with it.
Okay.
Look, man, when I lived in Azerbaijan, it was similar. Like, when I lived there, women, I was in Baku. I lived there for 10 years. Women would walk around in, like, pitch dark. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Don't know where they was coming from, but they'd be fully dressed, and I'm talking about they could have on something provocative. Nobody bothers them.
Right.
No catcalls, no rapes, no murders, none of that.
Right.
And that is because leadership starts at the top and it trickles down. You have a culture of people who care about each other. You know, you care about your neighbor. Your neighbor cares about you and your children. Like, in this country, most of us, we can't even name 3 neighbors. No matter whether you live in a rich neighborhood or a poor neighborhood.
You're right.
Most of us can't even name 3 neighbors. And we wonder why we have all of this dissension and separation.
I mean, look, we're both right in this conversation, right? Neither one of us are wrong. But when you're dealing with the system, like, look, like, you know that if you commit a crime in America, you could get a good lawyer and you might be able to get away with it.
That's right. Many variables.
Right. A lot of variables. Look at OJ. You know, look at A$AP Rocky. Look at a lot of different people that got away with stuff, and people felt like, well, I kind of thought they were guilty, but okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? I interviewed A$AP Rocky's lawyer, Joe Tacopina. He was going hard that A$AP Rocky had a starter pistol that whole time. I still think that's a silly defense. You know, I don't know of any sane person that would go meet another man over a conflict that they're having and bring a fake gun.
Well, if he got a couple of goons with him and, you know, he just want to scare the guy, I mean, that's plausible.
Okay. Well, to me, it's not.
And A$AP Rocky ain't no street dude like that anyway, so I can see something like that happening.
Well, but he's been in jail. He's been to Rikers. You know,
He ain't going to jail don't make you street.
All I'm saying is, me personally, I would be terrified to pull out a starter pistol on somebody because I would assume that if they had
they might have a real gun.
that'd be it.
Yeah.
And they'd be fully justified. Remember there was that case? I mean, you talked about that. Remember that guy walked into like a diner and started robbing everybody, and one of the patrons killed him?
Yeah.
When he walked over the body, he was like, it's a fake gun. And he like threw it down in disgust.
Yeah.
What happened to that guy?
Yeah.
Nothing?
Yeah, they let him make it.
He wasn't charged with anything.
They let him make it.
So, but what I'm saying is, Joe was like, it's a fake gun. I'm like, okay, that's cool. You guys got away with the fake gun thing. That's cool. I'm happy. I'm happy for Joe. I like Joe. Me and Joe have been talking a lot. I like A$AP Rocky. I'm happy for him, but I still think it was probably a real gun, and he got away with it because he spent. You know, Joe Tacopina charged $2,400 an hour.
Damn.
Yeah, and he's worked on that case for 3 years. He probably walked away with like $5 million.
Damn.
To get him off. But then again, when your baby mother's a billionaire, she doesn't want the father of her 2 kids going to prison. She doesn't play a check.
Well, you can't put a price on freedom.
Exactly. But you have a chance of getting away with it. In these countries, you don't really have any sort of real trials. Like, if you do a crime, you're just guilty, and that's that. You think there's a jury in Dubai that votes on certain things? No, like, you broke the law, that's it. We don't really care about your excuse or whatever else. That's it. You know, that one woman, there was like a black woman who went to Dubai who like was yelling at one of the car rental workers.
She said the woman touched her. The woman said she touched her, and that's why they locked her up.
I had heard that like she had like it was something to do with like maybe she had like damaged the car or there was some extra charges and she was just pissed off and she didn't want to pay those extra charges. So she got into a yelling match with a guy thinking she's back in America.
Right.
And in Dubai, you can't do that shit.
Nah.
So she was locked up. And everyone was like, oh, it's so unfair because that guy could have came to America, did the same thing. You're right. He could have came to America, did the same thing. But he couldn't do the same thing in Dubai.
Right.
So in these places, you know that, you know, listen, it's all over for you if you go and do these crimes. You rape somebody, In America, you'll get some years. You rape somebody.
Maybe.
Yeah, depending on who your lawyer is. Lots of people get away with rape out here.
Yep.
For years and years. How long did it take Harvey Weinstein to go to prison for that shit? How many people did he allegedly rape along the way? Bill Cosby, you know?
Didn't Trump rape somebody?
Yeah, he raped his wife. Well, no, he raped his wife at one point. They came out in the divorce. And then the porn, not the porn star. There was that one woman who's a photographer who sued him civilly. She won. Yeah, our president, you could say, is a rapist. Rape somebody in Saudi Arabia. They'll castrate you. That's the end of the story. They'll cut your penis off. What are you going to do? Complain? You're going to speak out against the government? You're going to get a better lawyer? Oh, that's thrown out the window. So do you want that? Or do you want... And think about in these countries that have these rulers without any sort of voting, without any sort of freedom of speech, think about how many innocent people get put in prison and get put to death because they simply don't have the ability to defend themselves on any level.
But that happens here.
I know it does.
Just don't happen. Well,
but they don't even try to sugarcoat it.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
Listen, I came
Once
from a
we accuse you, you're out of here, period.
Listen, I came from a communist country. You'll never convince me that that's a better system than what we have here. I'll take this with all of its warts and scars over a communist system. Look at North Korea.
But you can say that because you're a white man in America. See, when I'm looking at it as a black man in America, I have a different set of problems. Besides, like, I got all your problems, and then I got black problems on top of that.
Right.
It's different.
No, I feel you. And I'll never know what that means.
So I can see why somebody like Trump would be like, yeah, let's kick it back to the old days and let's keep it like it's always been, you know. So it's a different experience, man, you know.
Yeah, man, listen, like I said, we're both right. Neither one of us is saying the wrong thing. We have our own perspectives, and we have our own experiences. And ultimately, nothing is stopping us from leaving this country.
Before I get, that's true.
Yeah.
Actually, something is stopping me. You know, my family is here, so that's what stopped me. If I didn't have family here, and I got deep family here, I got like damn near 100 first cousins. So if I didn't have that, I would not be here, bro. I wouldn't be here. Period. Point blank. Period.
You have the money to live somewhere else and come back and see your family whenever you want. So
yeah,
I'm not totally buying that.
Nah, I'd be out here all the time, man. I'd be out all the time.
Okay.
Because, you know, out of sight, out of mind, you know, and all this type of stuff and whatever.
I feel you.
Know. And we can go into
all that, yeah.
Yeah, we can go into that later.
Yeah.
But, man, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show. Before I go, what's your prediction on the stocks right now? You know, I know I know we saw a slight increase, but what do you think over the next 6 months going to look like?
I don't really care about 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever else.
Just long run.
I'm always long term and everything. I haven't sold anything.
Yeah.
I haven't sold a single share recently.
Did you buy some more on the dip? I know you bought some on the dip.
I did it because I have a bunch of expenses right now. I have a bunch of extra expenses that's pulling my money into that.
Yeah.
But had I not had that going on, I would absolutely be pouring my money into the stock market.
Because that was a nice little dip last week.
It was a great dip, and I was even tweeting about it. I said, if I had an extra $1 million, I would be buying right now.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no, it's all going to go to zero. And it's like, it's never gone to zero. I think that what's happening right now is not going to be a permanent situation. Yes, these tariffs, you know, everyone's freaking out over and so forth. But these tariffs are not going to stay here forever. They're already loosening some of the tariffs. They removed the tariffs on cell phones. And they're going to start adjusting here and there. And eventually China and America will work it out. No one's going to benefit by having 100% tariffs between the two biggest trading partners on earth, right? But I think what Trump is doing is playing hardball. And he's probably, when the dust settles, I think that this approach will actually put us in a slightly better position. I think. That's what I think. But who knows? Who knows?
Man,
who knows? Listen, I wish. Listen, the last time I bought.
You're a hell of an optimist, man.
I am. And the last time I bought Tesla stock was when everybody hated Elon Musk for buying Twitter, and the stock was at an all-time low. It was lower than it is now. So I bought a whole ton of it, and after the election, it went absolutely fucking crazy. I'm saying if I was someone that was buying and selling all the time, I probably would have sold at that time. But I just kept it. So now it's down again. But, it's still a very solid company. It's still, look, like for the first time in my life, I had a Tesla Model X Plaid. Right? Have you ever drove around me in that car?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the fastest car in America, right? It's faster than a Bugatti. I love the gull-wing doors. I love the auto drive. It's got full self-driving. I went, my lease was ending, and I went and test drove every competitor that I could find. I test drove the BMW i7. I checked out the new Escalade, the electric one. I checked out, what else? Some of the various Mercedes electric cars, even like the Maybach SUV and so forth. And after going through all that work, I bought the exact same car again. This is the first time in my life I ever did that. Usually I get something different. But I was like, I can't find anything better than this right now.
Man, that Tesla ain't all of that, man. That's why that shit be blowing up and stuff. It be catching on fire.
No, it doesn't. No.
So you haven't seen these stories where the Tesla caught on fire and stuff?
Listen, every car, you could find any car manufacturer with a car on fire. Are Teslas constantly bursting into flames? Absolutely not. I've had like 5 Teslas. They've all been great. I've never had one. Plus, and the thing about the Teslas also is that, and this is when I went through and test drove all the other cars, nobody's software is anywhere near where Tesla's is. The auto drive capability of Tesla, the fact that I can get in my car, take my foot off the gas, take my hands off the steering wheel, it will drive, stop at stop signs, stop at red lights, take turns, slow down, stop, and so forth, get on the freeway, switch lanes, get on the freeway, off the freeway. No car company even remotely has that type of technology. You know what every other car company has? Enhanced cruise control.
Have you gotten to a point to where you're so comfortable with that auto drive that you can sit like a passenger?
Yeah.
Well, like a real passenger if a human being was driving the car?
See, it doesn't let you do that. So every couple of minutes you have to touch the steering wheel.
Okay.
Right. And you also can't get on your phone and stuff like that. It actually tracks your eyeballs. So if you're looking down, looking away, not really looking at the road, it'll start to beep. And
so what's the purpose of it driving you if you can't look away and do something?
Well, because you're not actually, the actual act of driving has been eliminated. So you don't really have to drive. You could just basically just sit there and you watch, and you can check your phone occasionally. You can't just be on your phone scrolling for 5 minutes. You can check your phone, check your email, put it down, and then just go back to watching the road.
What's the wildest thing that you've ever done while that Tesla was driving itself?
There have been some sexual activities that have occurred while I was in the driver's seat. I'm not going to lie about that. That's definitely happened. And let me tell you this. I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. You shouldn't drink and drive. But if you do, you know what I'm saying? I remember, a few weeks ago, after my interview with Stevie J, he invited us to Mr. Chow's, and there were some other people there. We're all taking shots and everything else like that. At the end of the night, I was kind of blitzed. I probably shouldn't have been driving home. I'm not proud of this. But I jumped in my car, I put it on auto drive, and I got home very safely because I really was not driving, barely at all.
So what's next?
What's that?
Somebody's going to use that as a defense. Somebody's going to get pulled over for DUI, and they're going to use that as a defense, and they are going to win.
Well, you do have completely driverless cars. If you drive around L.A., especially the Hollywood area where I'm at a lot these days, you have Waymo, which is completely driverless taxis. The car pulls up with no one in it. You get in the back seat. There's no driver, and it takes you to where you need to be.
So you can get in there drunk if you want to.
Absolutely. It's like getting into a taxi drunk.
Yeah.
I hope at some point, by the time my kids get to a driving age, it'd be great if I didn't even have to get them a car. I just got them a Waymo pass, and they could just go wherever the hell they want to go, and they wouldn't have to I wouldn't have to worry about some pervert driver, Uber driver, trying to take advantage of them or anything else like that. They're going to get into a car with no driver, and it's almost like getting on a train. You know what I'm saying? And I think, and plus, the whole robot technology that Elon's working with. I mean, he says something that at one point he predicts that this will be the biggest selling product the world has ever seen. Now, imagine having an iPhone that has arms and legs. They could do whatever you want. Wash your dishes, walk your dog, pick up your kids, make your meals, make your bed, clean up after the house, I mean, I've had Roombas over the years and they've all been relatively useless. But imagine an actual person cleaning your house.
Imagine a robot handling your business for you. I'm talking about like somebody running their mouth, you send that robot after that.
It'll happen. It'll happen. So someone get their ass beat by a robot.
Like, whoop that man.
Yeah.
That, man. Yeah.
I remember there's a show called The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, right? It's basically, like the Boba Fett story. The Mandalorian is the guys with the armor and so forth. And, every episode is like a different kind of like adventure, right? So there was this one episode where he goes to this world that's completely run by these types of robots. But what's been happening is that every so often these robots wild out and start killing people, right? So he goes and meets with the leader of this world, and they explain the situation to him. He goes, well, why don't you just turn off the robots? He goes, oh, no, we can't do that. People have gotten way too used to not working and having a leisurely lifestyle and so forth. So if a couple people die, that's okay. We just got to fix the problem. But turning off the robots, that's not an option right now. And I think that's going to eventually happen. I think it's predicting where we're going.
We're kind of there already. We're just not talking about live human robots. We're talking about the
cell phones.
Some of the stuff that's happening already. Yeah. People are already, we've already had a few casualties.
I mean, look, for years, when Vlad TV launched around 2008, VladTV.com, the news website, was a bigger portion of our business than the YouTube channel initially. Now, over time, it started to switch. But once AI became more advanced, like I believe it was about a year ago, I had to lay off my whole writing staff because it was just like we can just press a button and then AI will basically create the article for all, for example, all our videos up until last year had a human writer that would write a summary of that video. You're talking about a lot of videos every day. But now you could just take the transcript from the video, run it through AI, and it does a job that's almost as good, sometimes even better. So I had to lay off my staff. All these people lost their job because AI took over their job. And I'm not necessarily mad at that. I mean, I'm upset that some of these people had been working with me for a long time, and I felt very bad about letting them go. But essentially, not all jobs are going to be here to stay. Technology will take over jobs, and I think trying to limit technology so people can keep a job is not ever going to work in the long term.
No, that's not going to work, man. Yeah. AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
Better get with the program and get left behind.
Yeah.
One person that will never be left behind is Vlad, man. He is a trailblazer, man.
Thank you, man.
No matter what you might think, man, Vlad is a trailblazer. And, man, you're doing your thing, man. Keep it up, bro. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, man. Like I said in the beginning, I purposely never spoke about the Farrakhan thing. That you could talk to all these platforms that I've been on, whether it was Breakfast Club or Drink Champs or Math Hoffa or whoever else. I always said, I don't want to talk about the Farrakhan thing. Because when I did want to talk about it, I wanted to talk about it with you. Because you have actually been my friend. Like, when you compare, the number of hours we spent in front of a camera versus on the phone is not even close. Probably a 20-to-1 ratio. We have spent hours and hours on the phone over the years, and you've always been 100% solid. You've never deviated. And yeah, you did boycott Vlad TV, but you never boycotted our friendship.
Right.
And that, to me, was the important part. I don't give a shit if someone comes on the show again. Who cares? The show is built on revolving guests anyways. So a certain person not coming on the show has never really bothered me. But the loss of of a relationship, someone who I thought, respects me on a level where they're not just using our relationship for a viral moment or a few clicks or a few views. That to me was important. And you've always kept your character when it comes to that. And that's why I think we've always had the friendship that we had and the mutual respect that we have. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me on the platform. I'm glad I got to do it here. And when this comes out, it's gonna create quite a stir.
We'll shake up something, man.
Yeah, and that's cool, man. That's cool. And now moving forward, this will not be one of the questions that's off limits when it comes to doing other interviews.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do, Drink Champs in the near future and so forth. And, we can now talk about that again. And, but now that I've talked about it on your platform first, and that to me was important. And I always told you I'm going on a promo run right now, but I'm not going to talk about that until you get on your show. And if you've seen me, I did Cameron's show. I did Bootleg Kev. I did Academics.
Yeah, you've been busy.
I've been busy. Busy. Well, because, this promo run is about the Vlad TV YouTube Masterclass.
Yeah.
Which we haven't even talked about yet.
I'm sorry,
It's okay.
yeah. I'm sorry to not mention that because I know that's a big deal to you.
Well, that's why I'm doing these interviews.
Can you share just some of the nuances of that?
Sure. So this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. About close to 3 years ago, we launched the membership section of Vlad TV on the YouTube channel. So for $5 a month, you get the interviews in its entirety on the first day or sometimes the second or third day, but very early compared to the general public that usually gets it after weeks or sometimes over a month. So we have close to 10,000 members on that side of the business, and that's been very successful. But what I wanted to do was create another tier, which is the Vlad TV YouTube Masterclass tier, which is $100 a month. And that is where I break down how I built my YouTube channel and how I've maintained my YouTube channel over the years. And I think I counted it, one of the promos I did, like I've made over $30 million on YouTube over the last 18 years. And I wanted to share this information because a lot of people hit me and say, hey, I'm trying to do what you're doing. How do I increase my channel? How do I get my viewers up? How do I get my views up and so forth? So I'm like, well, instead of trying to help individual people, let me actually create a system where we have lessons that break down what it is that I did. So there's a lesson about how I started the channel and some of the philosophies I use to this day and some of the things that also didn't work. There's an episode about how to book celebrity guests. Because if you look at every successful YouTube channel, every successful podcast, it relies on having guests. Like your show now, right? This is not a monologue that you do every day.
Right.
This is based on getting people like Cat Williams, getting people like myself and so forth to kind of get people engaged. So there's a whole section about how to get guests. And also, I think the important part of that episode is like the level of rejection that you have to deal with, even at a high level. That sometimes we'll contact 100 people and not get a single response. But then when you get that one response at 101, it's all worth it. There's a whole section about equipment where we show a $100 setup that'll get you a relatively good video and audio quality video. And then we show a $40,000 setup in our Vlad TV New York studio. So this is what you could aspire to. And there's also there's an episode about how money is actually made on YouTube. So I actually show so for the first time ever, I actually show the financials behind Vlad TV. So I showed how a single video made over $50,000. And I actually showed the YouTube numbers and showed exactly why it did that and how it's not always reproducible, but it can be reproducible.
Is that the most you've ever made on a single video?
About that, yeah. I'm sure you've done better with that with the Cat Williams interview, but
I did a little something.
There's an episode about how to keep videos monetized.
Yeah.
So I show how I have a video with porn star Sarah J that over the past year made got 100,000 views and made about $4. And then a video, because it was demonetized,
right,
versus a video with like, let's say Mano, who got 100,000 views and made like $450. So when you think about that, right, when you think about how huge those numbers vary, imagine spending a year making videos and you can either make $10,000 or $1 million off the same videos. That's the difference when it comes to monetized versus demonetized. 10,000 versus 1 million off the exact same videos. And we even show ways that YouTube doesn't tell you about that actually could remonetize a video that got unmonetized. There's a new video that coming up next month where I actually show how the membership system works. And I'll show you step by step how I built up my membership, where it is right now, what built it, and so forth. We have that. Every month, we have an exclusive interview with a successful YouTuber, and that part of the interview is not available to the public. So the first episode was with academics, and he explained how he built his channel. The next episode that's coming out is with Gilbert Arenas, where he shows how he makes $20 million a year off of a YouTube channel he launched 2 years ago. And he actually breaks it down. And I remember at one point, I said, do you make more money off sponsorships than, YouTube? He said, oh, definitely sponsorships. I said, well, how much did you make off YouTube last month? He goes, I don't know, let me check. He pulled out his phone and he shows it on the screen and showed $300,000 right there in real time.
So he made pretty much $20 million off sponsorship alone.
The sponsorships, he said, makes about $1.1 million a month.
Oh, we need to talk.
Right. It's a real episode. It's about to come out.
Yeah.
It's about to come out. But he also explained how he did it. He said before he got into it, he looked at the landscape, of sports, and he realized nobody had a live show with actual experts on it, not on YouTube. So he built a whole studio in his home, got his cast together, and every day, Monday through Friday, they live stream for 4 or 5 hours a day, as well as getting big guests and everything else like that. But they take it seriously. And that's how we built it up over time. And also twice a month, I go on live just for the masterclasses. I do a YouTube live where I specifically answer people's questions and I review people's YouTube channels right there on the spot.
Yeah.
Now, look, a lot of people could say, well, what Vlad is offering, there's public videos on YouTube that say essentially the same thing. Well, here's the difference. None of those YouTube channels come from a level of success that I've consistently had over 18 years. It's a little different when someone who's got 6 million followers and makes millions of dollars a year is telling you about specific things than someone who's got 30,000 followers and is trying to build a business around teaching people when they themselves have not really done it. I have actually done it, and I've continued to do it year after year after year. It's like when I do No Jumper, Adam refers me to the Godfather of YouTube. I think that's kind of a cool title because it's I really was there in the very beginning. Right when YouTube launched its partner program, I was there, and I've consistently grown it year after year. Nobody in the space has done that. Yeah, there was a Ski TV, and I think All Hip Hop had a YouTube channel, but you look at these channels now, and they're essentially almost non-existent. Nobody has millions of followers and gets this type of impact year after year, consistently, without missing a single year. And this is what I'm trying to impart. And this is why it's $100 and not $5 or $10. If you're serious about what you're doing, one lesson alone will make you thousands of dollars.
Right on.
So that's the Vlad TV YouTube Masterclass. If you go to if you go to youtube.com/VladTV/join, choose the Masterclass option, and join the community, man. The number of members have really surpassed my expectations. I didn't know how many people were going to be willing to pay $100 because I've never asked for that amount of money for my viewers before. But we've had a lot of members. The lives are always packed. I'm always having to just try to get through everyone's questions and so forth. And in general, people have been very happy. And something I'm going to continue to kind of keep pushing.
There it is. Keep pushing.
Yeah.
Those are the operative words. Keep pushing.
Keep pushing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vlad.
Yeah.
No more talk.
No more talk.